Good morning and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting for February 26, 2019. Madam Clerk.
Item 1 on the closed session agenda, threat to public services or facilities pursuant to Government Code Section 54957A, consultation with Captain Jim Macedo, Calaveras County Sheriff's Office.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session. Good morning and welcome back to the February 26, 2019 Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting. If you're able, will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Supervisor Mills, will you please lead us?
Let us begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Report of closed session. Item 1, threat to public services or facilities pursuant to Government Code Section 54957A, consultation with Captain Jim Macedo, Calaveras County Sheriff's Office. There was no reportable action taken.
Thank you. Announcements. Any announcements from the board? Supervisor Mills.
I do have one, and this is due to an ongoing issue regarding the Camp 9 Road outside of Vallecito off of Parrots Ferry. The local private landowners have done their role in the no trespass letters and all of the signage necessary and are beginning to clean up their properties, but it also means that if you have an intention of going out there to do practice shooting, that you will be cited. And we already have several issues that have come up over the last weekend. 14 citations were issued. So it's an off-limits area, folks. If you even step out of your car and bring your rifle out, you want to plink at some rocks. It was the reason we had a fire last year, was because of that area. So no shooting on Camp 9 Road, and the BLM is aware of it too. So CHP has done a patrol out there yesterday. Fish and Wildlife was on a patrol out there yesterday. It's an active area. We're paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. Other supervisor announcements? Seeing none, is there any announcements from staff? Seeing none, we will move on to public comment.
Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Thank you. I think everybody knows the rules. Always conduct yourself with civility and reflect well upon your comments, reflect well upon the county. Please. First up.
Good morning, Board. If you would take under consideration a carve-out so that the approved farms in good standing that paid Measure C taxes can be grandfathered in and allowed to cultivate this year. The time for healing is now. Creating trust will allow the community to grow stronger. Calaveras has had a lack of affordable housing for much longer than the 3.5 years since the Butte fire. We are a community in crisis. Fewer than 1/5 of all the structures have been rebuilt since September 9th, 2015. The Utilities Chapter 11 filing has precluded plaintiffs from payment for signed settlements and the justice of a trial by jury instead of a bankruptcy judge. The District 2 community has been decimated both economically and emotionally because the permaculture that had existed in and around the scar no longer exists. There's one narrow road for 190 farms at most. All have been inspected and approved already by the county. These specific farms also obtained temporary state licenses that are the only qualified farms to apply for provisional licenses this year. In order to obtain a provisional license, every applicant must also submit a complete annual license application, as well as the annual fee that can cost as much as $40,000. If these farms are not able to operate this year, most will not make it. Failure to operate this year will also result in loss of standing with the state. All farms will be sent to the back of the line of over 6,000 backlogged applications. State regulations are the strictest in the country. The planning department needs to finish the general plan update and all the subsequent rezoning. The Ag Department is more than capable of overseeing business owners that have already passed background checks, inspections, and own approved farms. I urge you to eliminate all the redundancy. Let all approved farms be allowed to operate this year so that they may obtain the state license. Not only will this deliver millions in Measure C taxes, but will allow me to feed my children. Farms in good standing that were precluded by the choices this board makes about minimum acreage need to be allowed to obtain a state license so a lateral move to a preferred property next year can be preserved. The Calaveras Unified School District just fired 11 teachers this past week. 26 new hires are left from the UO, and the farmers and their families are the only ones unemployed. Granted, the board is not responsible for the teachers, but consider these developments in conjunction with losing everything in the fire, reinvesting in our burnt property for a business that was taken away from us, only after the whole industry paid enough in taxes to keep the county from going bankrupt. What a huge pill to be force-fed. Why would any sane person want to continue living and building a business here after being so deliberately taken advantage of by her own local government? Why? Because we love Calaveras and desperately want to continue building our business and raising our children here. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good morning, Board. Sandy Mizratt, District 2. This is the first time I'm standing before the 2019 Board, and I wanted to welcome back Supervisor Callaway. Hello and welcome, Ben Stopper, and congratulations, Chair Garamendi. I apologize for not making last week's study session, but I had a meeting conflict. I still support regulated cannabis in this county. I did take the time to watch the video of the meeting, and with that review, I felt it important to come and offer you a perspective to consider. First and foremost, I think we need to accept that what is past is truly in the past. There is much to be learned from the urgency ordinance, and if that information, or data, if you will, is used on any level, it should be referenced for the purposes of crafting a permanent ordinance based on what we know now that we didn't know before. 2 years of real-life data. As I told the prior board, and Supervisor Mills, Supervisor Tuffanelli, you may remember that, I ask that your decisions be based on fact, not emotion. Why do I reiterate this? Because I have a bit of fact to share with you today regarding rural residential. I live in the El Rancho Loma Serena Homeowners Association. Prior to the Butte fire and our green rush, our directors and officers insurance ran us $280 per year. We had a landlord with a cultivator who allowed their tenant to cultivate on their property. He then turned around and sued the HOA when he was fined for their behavior. The HOA ultimately prevailed in Calaveras Superior Court, only to have our insurance carrier cancel us from a D&O insurance perspective. The only coverage that we could get at the time increased our premium from that $280 I mentioned to $10,944 a year. We shopped heavily this year, and we were able to get that down to $10,405. That's the best rate the board could find. So do the math. $280 versus either rate is still an increase of over $10,000 a year that each property owner in that HOA now funds via increased dues. So this is a real-life example of where 148 owners have already been negatively impacted financially by no fault of their own, and for ensuring that their legal governing documents are enforced. This may impact other HOAs in Calaveras County if they're engaged in legal action to enforce their CC&Rs. So I'm asking that you consider this when you start looking at what we do with rural residential zoning. And while I understand that some of those individuals have paid their fees to cultivate during the temporary ordinance, there are now folks that are paying for those who violated the rule of law in an HOA.
Thank you very much, Sandy.
Good morning, Board. I sat through the study session, and I came away feeling really confused why county staff stands up here and says words like, the growers need to be coddled or babysat. There were 190 farms that followed the rules, paid their dues, got retroactive as-built grading permits, even before we were asked to. I asked if I needed a grading permit before the UO. I was told no. I got a grading permit. I paid the fees. We paid the engineers. We got the slight correction that we needed done. Cost a lot of money, and I got half of my grading permit back because it didn't cost the county very much to come and make sure that we did what we needed to do. I'm baffled why there wasn't a report by the Ag Department. This is an agricultural product. We are farming. We are farming to the hardest, strictest regulations of any ag. I had several conversations with Kevin Wright over the course of the UO, and he told me that I think it was 180 farms came forward and signed up with him and registered their farms. And he testified before this board before that it's basically organic, that we are only allowed to use what is allowed on leafy greens. I think that the people that passed the UO, all of those regulations, that have the strict regulations and the strict inspections that are coming from the state, ought to be allowed to grow this year. I don't understand why we have 26 new hires from the UO, and I heard people from planning saying that they could only process 25 applications. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. Our inspection lasted about 20 minutes. There were no armed sheriffs because we are known to the county. I heard when the sheriff was originally talking about the UO that they need armed guards because we're all armed. That is not true. Most of us do not have firearms because we do not have access to Second Amendment rights as growers. So I wish you would please reconsider your timeline and get us back to work as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public speakers? Seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Are there any board members who'd like to pull items? Supervisor Mills.
Item number 6 and item number 8.
What item?
8.
6 and 8. Any other items? Any staff want to pull any items? Public? Seeing none, there's a motion to accept the remainder. Excuse me, Supervisor Mills.
No, that's okay. I'll move the remainder.
I'll second.
Moved by Supervisor Mills, second by Supervisor Tofinelli. All in favor?
Aye.
One moment, please. Public comment?
Thank you.
No, don't have to? Very good. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was afraid I forgot that one out.
Item 6 is from Public Works to receive the written fiscal year 2017-18 annual reports for the Road Impact Mitigation, Valley Springs Benefit Basin, Copperopolis Benefit Basin, and Bret Harte Traffic Impact Mitigation Development Fee Programs.
Supervisor Mills.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The only purpose of pulling this item was because of the Copperopolis Benefit Basin. I noticed that our Public Works Director, Mr. Pack, is here, but it has, my comments have to do with the tentative construction of the roundabout at Copper Cove Drive in Littlejohn, and to ensure the public that there are no funds being removed from our general fund, from the benefit basin funds, or whatever funds might be necessary to make that construction happen, that it is only going to be the funds that were set aside under the original Castle and Cook project, which is now part of Copper Valley Development, and they are entirely responsible for the costs to construct that project, and that their construction timeline is such that they will probably get that done starting this spring and through this summer. Am I correct? Okay, thank you. I know that this has been a controversial issue in that area, but we did receive an approval from the Copper Cove Lake Tulloch Homeowners Association, Saddle Creek Homeowners Association, were both directly impacted by it, as well as they had conversations with the local fire district to ensure that everybody was on board with their plan. And so, the public has already had a chance to view and vet what that project looks like, and I know it is part of these discussions, so that's why I brought it up.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stopper?
I would also like to bring up the program project list for the Valley Springs Benefit Basin program project list. There's a list here. A lot of these were approved long ago, I believe in our discussions back in 2004 for prioritization. And I just want to bring up during the Highway 26 corridor improvements, we still have Olive Orchard Road and Garner Place two-way left turn pocket on that list as of this time. And there's the Hogan Dam Road reconfigure intersections on that list. These are all things that have been brought up by the community that many of them are worried about. And I do know that during certain sessions, we've brought up Hogan Dam Road before. I just wanted to say that out loud publicly.
Yeah, and again, I'm Joshua Pack. I'm your Director of Public Works, and you'll see, while this is a report of the previous expenditures for the last year and the report out of the projects in the plan, there are some, the updated capital improvement plan or program, which will be coming to you in March, will reflect some projects and changes reflected in this program. In addition, it's my anticipation, subsequent to the adoption of the general plan and the circulation element, that we'll be bringing a plan before you to revise each of these plans to reflect updated expectations of the community. So that'll be likely occurring sometime in 2019 or depending on the adoption of the general plan at some point thereafter. So my goal is to do that in the near term. Again, I think there's I think sometimes there's an expectation that all these would be built in a short period of time, when in fact this plan's over many years. But I think it's time to bring that plan for, as you mentioned, 2004 or before. It's time to bring that for a refresh. So again, but that's subsequent to the adoption of the general plan. So it's on my radar, it's on my department's radar, and we'll be bringing that to you at some point in a later date.
Any other further questions from the board? Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for further discussion or a motion.
I'll move to approve this consent agenda item.
Moved by Supervisor Stopper,
Second.
second by Supervisor Mills. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Item 8 is from the Department of Office of Emergency Services. Authorize the board chair to execute the First Amendment to professional services agreement between Calaveras County and Tetra Tech Incorporated for the recovery of homeowners' insurance revenue associated with the Cal Recycle right of entry debris removal operations for an amount not to exceed $854,656.81 for the period of August 2nd, 2018 through June 30th, 2019.
Mr. Mills?
Thank you, Chair, and I know this is in your district primarily, but I do have some concerns as to whether or not we're going to be impacted by an audit in the future for these monies, and that if there's a possibility that we may have some of these charges disallowed, that it will be something that we will in essence be having to take out of some other funds in other locations. since it's on the agenda, I just would like to be sure that we think about how we're going to set aside funds for that, maybe in the future budget for 2019, so that we can allocate it now and set it as a reserve or in a contingency account somewhere earmarked specifically for the potential paying of disallowed claims. And that's my concern. I don't want it to just be, well, we can pull it from contingency at a moment's notice. I think this board needs to clearly understand that there has to be an allocation of funds set aside now specifically for that purpose, knowing full well that until the audit's completed and the books are totally closed, that this money is not going to be set aside for any other purpose or any other goal till it's done.
Let's assess the risk.
So because we're dealing with public assistance grant monies through FEMA, yes, there will be a full audit. The audit will be handled by the Office of Inspector General, so the OIG will come out and make a visit to us. It could take anywhere to 1 to 5 years after the close of the entire grant program. So until all of the sub-projects that are under that grant that we're dealing with are done and closed out, the OIG won't come out and do that. It's going to take quite a while for us to kind of be out from underneath that umbrella, and the longer, like currently we're still waiting on environmental for the next phase of tree removal. So that's not really in our control. So as we continue to make progress and get this closed up, then the sooner we'll get the good or the bad news. I've said all along that documentation is really our responsibility as a county. And I do know that there were times where proper documentation didn't happen. And so I've said, I've never been shy about stating this to the board and saying this publicly. There will be disallowances by the OIG. I would estimate it's probably going to be $1 million, if not a little bit more. That's just the reality. When the OIG comes out, and this was very clear.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Rebecca. $1 million is what you're estimating is going to be disallowed?
Yes.
And these are monies that we're trying to get reimbursed. So these are monies we've put out.
These are monies that we've
So
put
it just
out.
won't be a reimbursement.
They've already been reimbursed. So what happens is...
They were reimbursed already?
Yes. So what happens is we submit claims, and they don't really scrutinize the claims that we're necessarily submitting. They'll scrutinize every dollar that was claimed at the time that they do their audit. So at the time that they do their audit, they'll go through... we had a training that they came out, I don't remember when that was, but FEMA and Callaway S&S came out and did a countywide training. Supervisor Mills, you may have been there. And from a fiscal component, you know, it's kind of interesting. In essence, the OIG comes out with a calculator and hits the minus button. That's what they do. They're not there to... they're there to basically hold us accountable for dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And we just had to be really, we had to acknowledge that. So that's part of the, it's going to be the frustration point when that happens, because if there wasn't proper documentation, if we can't find the time records, if we didn't do the proper federal procurement requirements, if we didn't take the pictures appropriately, if we didn't geotag every single tree that was removed, didn't document where the debris went, those are all going to be pain points. So until it happens, it's really hard to guesstimate. The $1 million is what I know for sure that is going to be a problem. Because they were activities that, while the board may have approved them, they weren't allowable under the terms of the grant program. So those are going to be an issue, and these are conversations I've had with the current CAO, the former CAO, the CAO before that. I've had these conversations with board members. And I've said all along, we really need to do a really good job at documenting. The good news is on the Tetra Tech contract, specifically, because that was such a large contract, and specifically with even adding GANDA to it, we did have Cal OES and FEMA actually review that contract because that was important to ensure that they were on the same page with us on day one, because that is going to be that would be a huge exposure point for us if we went sideways on that. So for that, I'm comfortable with the Tetra Tech contract and the contracts related to the tree removal. The tree removal and the ash removal, we specifically had them review those contracts.
So let me continue down this road. This review is going to be a parcel by parcel review.
My understanding in talking to other counties that are having kind of a similar, specifically with ash removal and with tree removal, when the OAG comes out, they will actually look tree by tree and they'll look at parcel by parcel, depending on which debris removal program you're talking about. So it could take quite a bit of time for them to go through that and document. Now, are they going to check every single tree and every single parcel, or are they going to do a sampling? I would guess it's probably going to be a sampling, but if they find any issues with their sample, then they'll continue to kind of widen their scope.
Before other supervisors weigh in, then I would definitely like to have, if it's necessary, a separate agenda item that this board can discuss setting aside funds in the future and having them already there and ready so that we don't start spending down or considering them as part of a larger pool of optional funds for future budget years. It just needs to be set aside now and understood clearly.
So the board should be aware that when we were identifying costs associated with potential settlement funds and what we were putting on the table for settlement, part of that was this. So part of the 24 million, which now we have 20 million, consists of is actually expenditures that I did believe were going to be disallowed. So part of that is in that $20 million. So just be aware, it's not like you have to find, additional money somewhere else or make cuts somewhere else. That was what the intention of part of that $20 million was for.
Thank you, Chair.
Very good point. Supervisor Stopper.
This project's been passed around between multiple heads right now. I just want to point out that the ones that are running it now are cleaning up quite a bit, and none of this is any fault of the current project manager, right? The fact that things weren't documented properly in the past?
I am talking about on a countywide perspective with regards to utilizing public assistance funds.
Yes.
I think part of the issue that we've had historically is there has been a lack of countywide training. And so when the emergency happened, three-quarters of the people didn't know where the emergency operations plan were. The quarter that did know where the emergency operations plan was, were not familiar with it. There had not been countywide training. There wasn't countywide established forms to fill out. And so when the emergency was happening and everyone is scrambling to ensure that the public is safe and that we're protecting everyone that's out there and our own staff, while I'm sitting there saying you need to take a moment and document, the responses that I got most of the time was, we're in an emergency, we don't have time for that. The problem is the fact that it was that large. We knew it was going to be a local disaster. We knew it was going to be a state disaster, and then very quickly it turned into a federal declaration. That isn't an excuse that the OAG will accept, and it's not an excuse that Cal OES will accept. So there's points of the grants that we're using that if you're going to accept the money, you have to accept the terms. And so that is a pain point that we have. And so that's something that, I've talked to Michelle with quite a bit, that we really need to ensure that we have all of that in place before it happens again, because it's not that we're never going to experience a disaster. Again, we're going to, and we continue to. So we have to make sure that all of the employees, department heads all the way down to line staff, are trained and educated and know where to get that information and know what they need to do if they're in that position.
That was a nice long answer to the point of the OES director is now putting a sustainable plan together that implements that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And when we're engaging with contractors, we're ensuring that the contractors have past experience and provable experience in dealing specifically with federal programs.
Supervisor Toffenali.
Yeah, that was kind of the point that I was going to get to we submitted bills to get reimbursed for that came from, and I'm assuming not all of this is county activities, that some of the $1 million you're talking about was the documentation that we acquired from our contractors in order to bill. So none of that has to do, so we did not, if they submitted something that wasn't reimbursable, we didn't go through and check or ask for documentation, what they were billing us for before we paid them?
Contractor-wise, yes. And so everything they gave us was documented, and it was parceled out where it needed to be. And so we kind of had a myriad of reviews before it got to us to actually pay. I would say our biggest pain point is going to be on local expenditures related to everything from emergency protective measures to mutual aid information. It's going to be that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I agree, and I think this is a very good point, and something we need to consider when we have our disaster preparedness study session, as well as mid-year budget, to make sure we've got things in queue.
Yeah, and I would just say it's not, unfortunately, it's not uncommon to have a jurisdiction that is under a federal declaration. It's not uncommon for them to have disallowed expenses. It just unfortunately is, it happens. And while a lot of counties are now experiencing a lot more disasters, we're getting better at it, unfortunately. When you haven't had that experience and it's brand new, trying to respond correctly so that you're protecting your finances is not always the first thing on your mind. And so that can, in essence, bite us. So I think that is not all that uncommon with large counties, small counties. So it's just making sure we're taking that into consideration, because we will be getting a bill for that.
Thank you. Have another question, Supervisor Mills?
Yeah, just a point, and I know we've got a fire chief in the back of the room, and he understands clearly under the ICS system, you do not dispatch to an incident without an incident number. You've got to have, what's my order number? Where am I in this whole thing? And the next thing they do is they start filling out the paperwork. Who is it that's going on this call? What's the equipment that's involved? What's the expenses that are involved? And the paperwork is the very first thing that you do after you say, I'm acknowledging that I'm being dispatched. So we just need to be sure, and I'm sure Michelle is working very hard to get staff onto that mode of start your paperwork the moment you've been told to get involved. And it's the failure to do that that is creating some of these issues today.
Yep.
So I understand, and I appreciate Clay Hawkins. I speak to history here and the work that he did, but it seemed to have fallen into a black hole after he left. And hopefully we can resurrect that and not repeat it, because there is going to be another one. And if we all can understand the paper trail is so critical, then we won't be fighting the fight.
Which concludes to my point. I'm glad you're on it, Michelle. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other comments or questions from the board, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Is there a further discussion or a motion?
I'll move this item, Mr. Chair.
Item is moved by Supervisor Toffenali. Is there a
I'll second it.
Second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. We're going to take 5 minutes to let the next presenter set up their program. So we'll be returning here at 47. Welcome back. We will continue on with our regular agenda. Madam Clerk.
Item 17 is from Economic Development to receive the 2017-18 annual report presentation by the Calaveras Visitors Bureau.
hang on. Hang on, let me go first. Good morning, Chair, Honorable Board. Kathy Galino, Economic Development. I have Ms. Lisa Bolton here today, who's the Executive Director of the Calaveras Visitors Bureau. She's going to be giving her annual report. And with much ado, or without much ado, let's have Lisa start.
Honourable Board of Supervisors, Chairman Jack Garamendi and Vice Chair Marita Callaway, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to make our annual report here. This is a report for the 2017-18 fiscal year. We're in the middle of the 18-19 fiscal year. So we do have a little bit of updated information for this fiscal year as well included in this report. We will be giving out some materials later in the presentation, but I wanted to have your full attention on the presentation as we begin, if you wouldn't mind. So the regional marketing organizations, the High Sierra Visitors Council and the Gold Country Visitors Association, allow us to create regional marketing programs through a contract with Visit California with matching funds up to $60,000. Membership with the DMA West allows us to keep on top of the latest best practices for destination marketing organizations, not only from a marketing perspective, but also from an infrastructural and operational perspective. We attend 2 DMA West conferences per year, the Tech Conference and the Leadership Conference, which are both specifically dedicated to destination marketing organizations, which is what the CVB is. I'm calling Calaveras Visitors Bureau CVB. As you can see, the total spending for the 2017-18 fiscal year comprised TOT contributions from the City of Angels Camp, from the county, from partner businesses, advertising in the Calaveras Experience Guide, and from gift shop sales at the Visitors Center in downtown Angels Camp. So at the bottom number there is actually the total spending, the budget for that for the 2017-18 fiscal year. These TOT stats show Visit California's which is the destination marketing organization for the state. They contract with Dean Runyon to provide tourism economic impact studies for each of California's counties and incorporated cities. Dean Runyon has worked for 25 years to assist with market research, planning, and economic analysis for travel, tourism, recreation, and education projects with an emphasis on economic or market information for planning, marketing policy, evaluation, and design. Their projects range from the individual facility to event level to states and the nation. As you can see, the data shows $193 million in travel spending in Calaveras County, including Angels Camp, and this is broken down into the following industry sectors: food service, lodging, entertainment and recreation, retail, transportation and gas, and groceries. This shows that tourism not only generates TOT taxes from lodging, but is also a significant generator of local sales tax. So now we have some statistics on the CVB's website. According to a 2017 DMA West sponsored study on the economic impact of DMO websites, like the Calaveras Visitors Bureau website, each new website visitor generates on average $37.13 on return on investment. In 2017, we launched our new mobile responsive site, created new multi-destination content, listings, wedding section, lodging bookings engine, and employed extensive SEO improvements, generating the following outstanding web results. Our web visits show that visitation to our website increased 29% from the previous fiscal year, and that we trend highest for the 25 to 44-year-old age range, and that we attract slightly higher numbers of females to males. We generated 287,922 sessions for the year, which translates into 789 unique visits per day. In the second half of 2018, which is not included in this chart, we generated 208,810 sessions, which translates into 1,144 unique visits per day, a further 45% increase. As you can see, the majority of our web visitors are using their mobile devices, which makes our switch to a mobile responsive site in the previous fiscal year essential. The bounce rate measures how many visitors come to the website and immediately bounced off, which is a bad sign. So a decrease of 76% in that rate shows a high increase in visitors engaging with the content. We launched a new online booking service completely free of charge to lodging partners in November 2017 with an initial count of 71 lodging properties represented and generated an estimated $36,633 in lodging revenue. We created 26 visitor blogs in the 2017-18 fiscal year with an average read of 1,461, making the CVB blog now one of the top performing media outlets for Calaveras County. Each blog, search engine optimized, is shared on Facebook and marketed to our approximately 10,000 newsletter subscribers and a monthly email. And just as a side note, we're currently running an online survey to measure the conversion rate of web users to actual destination visitors, and we should have that information within the next couple of months. So onto our social media marketing slide, with the average American spending upwards of 24 hours a day, that's me, 24 hours a week online. Our integrated digital and social media marketing strategies allow us to meet our visitors where they are, which is online. For the 2017-18 fiscal year, we made 360 posts on Facebook, generating a 21% increase in Facebook fans and outstanding reach for our top performing posts, as you can see. Since this report, our Facebook fan base has increased to more than 50,000. The Experience Guide, which is the primary print collateral piece that we distribute for Calaveras County and is very comprehensive. Our printed travel planners continue to be a highly successful marketing tools for destination marketing organizations. A study completed in 2014 by the WACVB, which is now DMA West, showed that almost 70% of those requesting guides travel to the destination. ROI was calculated at $48 per guide due to increased spending and length of stay in destination. This 68-page, full-color magazine-quality Calaveras Experience Guide, which includes maps, business listings, itineraries, historic town tours, and destination articles, is fully funded by advertising partners, and we distribute 80,000 annually. So, as you know, we operate a visitor center in historic downtown Angels Camp, and although operating a visitor center is not an essential part of DMO function, it does allow us to monitor visitor interests and demographics, encourages longer stays, and we create custom itineraries and disseminate partner sales materials and collect important visitor data for Angels Camp. Visitors and online visitors can opt in to join our free VIP program, and this is something that we primarily fulfill through the visitor center. This offers discounts and incentives to patronize 24 lodging properties, 17 restaurants, 14 recreation attractions, 4 spa and fitness providers, 8 retail shops, 19 wineries, and 1 real estate agent. Signing up requires entering an email address to receive our newsletters so that we can do further marketing to those individuals. So we do track everybody that signs into our visitor guest book, and we have on average about 12% sign in when people come into the visitor center. These people are going to skew to be most likely people from further afield. Local Calaveras people don't sign into our guest book, but it does give us interesting information on our visitors who come from far afield. Our top international guest book sign-ins were from Canada, UK, Germany, Australia, and France in that order. Top domestic were California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Texas, Florida, Arizona, and Colorado. Email marketing. So we continue to exceed the industry average open rate of 15.55% or 53% for our visitor newsletters, which have an open rate of 24%. And our business partner newsletters, which serve our business partners, have an open rate of 45%. On to finding and leveraging top media stories. For the 2017-18 fiscal year, the CVB maintained an ongoing contract with TrendKite in 2017, a media aggregating service that we monitored at least monthly. When prices increased using that service, we were lucky to find a new, more cost-effective service and signed a contract with Meltwater in 2018, to be able to continue to receive that media aggregating service. These services enabled us to find and share top media stories on Calaveras County, leveraging the content to our audience, and just as importantly, gauging destination sentiment. And on this list here, you can see some of the top media stories that were found or generated by our own destination marketing. So advertising is an important part of what we do. Currently, our advertising partners include Sunset. We do print and newsletter sponsorship with ads for the Mark Twain Wild West Fest and seasonal attractions. We advertise in the California Visitors Guide. We do an annual Gold Country print and co-op ad with GCVA Partners, which is a 3-page spread. We get leads from those that we then send out our newsletters to. We have a contract with NPR with 3 local stations with monthly coverage highlighting events and attractions throughout the city and county. We have a TripAdvisor professional partnership featuring new content created in-house, including photos, videos, events, articles, and banner ads. We have a contract with Meta Media, which is search engine marketing keywords, driving visitors to relevant content at our website. And we have Facebook advertising. We do an ongoing advertising year-round and pay-per-click, driving visitors to our website and to more likes on our Facebook page. The picture at the top there is actually a fam tour. That's a familiarization tour where we bring media experts, social media influencers and bloggers out to Calaveras County to have a first-hand experience. And this particular Canadian travel group we brought to the Calaveras Frog Jump, which was highly popular with them. They actually made it into the finals on their first day, but they couldn't be there for the second day, so it was very thrilling, and we got lots of coverage from them for that. So we customize each of our fam tours with social media influencers, travel trade professionals, and we give a first-hand experience of Calaveras, strategically customized to the interests of the hosted individual or group. And these are the ones that we did in the 2017-18 fiscal year. So it's also really important to us to make sure that we are creating an environment of sustainable tourism in Calaveras County. That happens to be all of a sudden a very new and exciting thing for Visit California to hear about programs that are successful. And we launched ours in the last fiscal year, which was a little bit ahead of the curve. Our county-wide tourism sustainability program aims to reduce some of the potentially adverse impacts of tourism on Calaveras County's beautiful environment in 3 ways. We do online education. We actually do education within the visitor center as well. Through the distribution and disposal of our biodegradable packet out bags through a partnership with Cal Waste. We have several businesses throughout Calaveras County that are actually giving those out, especially sports outfitters. And they can bring them back to the visitor center and have them recycled or disposed of through that partnership with Cal Waste. We also established what we're calling hydration stations. Individual businesses can sign up to be a hydration station, which allows people to bring in their water bottles to get free fill-ups. So we're hoping to reduce the use of single-use plastics. And why do we need to do this? Well, we need to protect these environments so that we have a tourism industry to carry us through the next generations, and because sustainability attracts. 70% of visitors are looking for sustainable travel. And so if we're appealing to that demographic, we're appealing to the majority of people, and that's a good thing for destination marketing. So the Calaveras Visitors Bureau is also heavily involved in business and community support. We work closely with the business community to provide ongoing support, collaboration, and partnership opportunities. Our alliance with the Calaveras County Chamber of Commerce and the Calaveras County Economic Development Department continues to strengthen and benefit the entire business community. We changed our bylaws last year to a partnership model to provide increased marketing support to tourism-related businesses while providing optimal marketing to the consumer markets by promoting the best of Calaveras rather than limiting our messaging by covering only businesses investing financially in the CVB. And this works to make Calaveras a much more interesting and entertaining option for people when they know more about what there is to see and do. So additional publications that we produce, and we're going to be handing out some packets in a few minutes, and you will have examples of these. We do a holiday shopping guide, which we push out in the winter season, encouraging people to shop in our charming historic downtowns. We include every single town in Calaveras County, and we print those, and we also make them available online. We also push them out to every business that was featured in the holiday shopping guide so they can do additional marketing, and this will help to drive more business to their businesses as well. Doesn't like my finger. It doesn't like my All right, so now go back to your We just need to go to play, but it doesn't like my finger. It doesn't like mine. Okay. Feel. Sorry, everyone. I'm a Mac person, and this is a PC, so.
And I'm a lefty, so.
There we go. Twin the two of us. Let's see. So. We also, one of the kind of cute things that we do that is really popular at travel trade shows is that we developed these wine bottle promos. I've given you an example in your packets each, and you can fight over who gets which one, because we actually have 10 varietals, but I just gave each of you one varietal. So each of these wine bottles on the front, it has a varietal that's very specific to Calaveras, one of the unusual varietals that we produce here. We have tasting notes right under it, and then we show each of the wineries that you can receive, that you can purchase that varietal at. On the back side is a recipe which incorporates that wine, which was formulated by a local chef at one of our local restaurants. This is like the most popular giveaway at our trade shows, and we're actually going to be updating those this year. What's that? What the heck? We can pass them out. We can pass them out now, and you can see. So, what else do we have here? So we also attend several conferences. The DMA West Tech Conference, Tech Summit, is perfectly aligned to destination marketing technology, so we keep at the forefront of all of the best marketing practices that we can possibly be doing from a tech standpoint and from a DMO standpoint, which is essential. The DMA West Leadership Summit is where we meet with other destination marketing organizations and their leadership, and we problem solve together, and we talk about issues that we have in our own communities and what other DMOs have found really work successfully in their area, which is highly important. And I meant to mention that I am moving back to the UK in July, so this position that I'm in right now as the executive director is available for, I think we're accepting applications through March 29th, and this leadership summit is one of the most important things they'd be able to attend. I'll be training this person for the whole of June, So we will hopefully have a very smooth transition, but I will absolutely be recommended that they attend the Leadership Summit. That was so essential for me when I first came on board in this position. We also attend the Central Sierra Economic Development Summit and the California Outlook Forum, which is where Visit California tells us all about their upcoming programs. They also provide really great information on tourism trends, demographics and psychographics, and how international marketing is going if we decide to tap into those international markets, which we have done with some of our partners. So I'm going to play a video here. This is actually the result of one of our partnerships with the Gold Country Visitors Association, one of those matching fund projects. We actually didn't have to invest anything in this video that was created by Visit California because we were selected as the county to represent Gold Country. What they've done is create a video with some of their digital influencers, and then this is linked to their website and pushed out through their newsletters. And it also has created, on their website, they've created an entire itinerary of things to do when you are coming to visit Calaveras Big Trees State Park. And it links through to all of those individual businesses too. Let me see if I can do this. Which one do I press, Kathy? Sorry. I don't know. Try this one. This would be a real shame if we can't show it to you. I know it did. So we tested it this morning. We tested it and it worked. So sorry about this. I am a techie, but not on PC, so I really apologize. Oh, there we go. That was it. All right, here you go.
Check the glasses. It is over.
Ah!
It went away.
Try again.
No.
It's on YouTube. What we're going to do.
It's embedded.
Well, if we don't make this work, I can email you the link and you can play it. But it's very cool, and it's an investment that Visit California made in Gold Country, because Visit California in the last several years has been doing a really good job of helping to promote the gateway communities and the rural communities. And part of the reason for that is because we've been very active in the Gold Country Visitors Association and the High Sierra Visitors Council, and we've been getting in front of Visit California as much as possible to really push these experiences. So this slide here gives you an idea of the marketing that we do for an event. So you've got your Capital Public Radio advertising going on 3 stations. And this is for just one event. So we do this for multiple of most of the biggest events. And then we do like a partial marketing plan, not quite this in-depth for some of the other events that we have too. So we created promotional Facebook posts. We got 51,000 people reached. You can see all the data on there. We did a Sunset Magazine newsletter takeover. So that means we're the only sponsors on their newsletter, and people click through to the event on our website. We did a Facebook ad campaign. We did a musical slideshow. We actually used music from guests that would be playing at the Mark Twain Wild West Fest as a backdrop for that. We did a dedicated blog with 193 unique visits. We had a dedicated web page with 1,500 unique visits, and we did also event photography. In fact, we've been doing more and more event photography. We've been trying to get out into the community to visit most of the events so that we can get great photography for the next year. So one of the other things that we do is we recognize tourism innovation in Calaveras County. We've been doing it for more than 12 years now. You can see all of the winners for the grand prize winners over the last several years. Before I came on with the CVB, we just had one winner per year, and now we have winners in multiple categories, including the grand prize winner. For this next fiscal year, we're introducing a sustainable category. So besides the weddings, events, recreation, retail, attraction, categories, we are adding sustainability, and people will be letting us know what kinds of sustainability initiatives that they have launched in their business. And this all gets voted on by the business partners of the Calaveras Visitors Bureau, which is anybody that's connected to the tourism industry. And we also push that voting opportunity out to the Board of Supervisors and to City Council and to other important people in the community. So this is your little CVB marketing team. Two on the right here, me and Cadence. We're the only full-time people. One person that we're not able to picture there is our calendar manager, Judy. She works 10 hours per week out of Washington State. She used to do visitor services for us in the visitor center in downtown Angels Camp. And when she moved to Washington, we asked her if she would continue doing managing our calendar. To think that you have somebody working 10 hours per week just on updating the calendar, that just shows you how much activity there is in Calaveras County, how many amazing opportunities there are for attracting the visiting public, and how important it is to have that very comprehensive calendar. And we really limit it to any event that would be of interest to the visiting public. We don't include all of the community events on there simply because it would bog down the information for the visitor and would be less effective. And so that's the end of the slideshow. And in your packets there, if I can describe what you have. So you have a copy of the Calaveras Experience Guide. You have a copy of one of your wine bottle promos. I actually put in here the 2018 holiday shopping guide, so you can see how comprehensive that is and how it covers every community in Calaveras County. We actually make this available digitally as well, so we printed and distributed 2,000 of them within the county, but we also pushed this out in our social media marketing, in our email campaigns, and it was downloaded digitally as well. And then the final item that you have is this entire printed report here. There's a little bit more detail in here than I went through in the presentation. And I also gave you a Hop Lightly Pack It Out sticker that I hope you'll use. You can just pull it off your binder right here and then stick it on your computer or anywhere you want to show that you care about sustainability in Calaveras County.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any questions from the board?
I'll go first. One is board member of the Wine Alliance and on the advisory board of Big Trees Association. I really appreciate the partnerships that you do with both organizations. What I'm interested in, Lisa's, well, one, I just have to say, the Visitors Bureau, I remember when there was a breakup between the Chamber and the Visitors Bureau. In fact, I think Kathy Zancanella and Sandy lives in Moke Hill, married to a man who divorced a woman who does the grape stuff. Lived here a long time.
Thanks
Anyway,
for the details, Maria.
yeah, I know. Sandy Lima and Kathy Z were really big proponents of starting the Visitors Bureau and getting going.
Right.
And from where you were then to seeing the sophistication of where the Visitors Bureau is now and the return on investment that the county and your partners get, I think speaks a whole lot to to your board and to your executive directors, current and past. So I appreciate that. but I'm not letting you off the hook with just a kudo. I want to know, how do we compare with other Gold Country counties on what we're doing, because we are competing for the same audience? Thank you.
We are. We each come up with our own different marketing strategies. Calaveras County is currently very digitally oriented compared to Amador's, which is with more traditional print publications. So I feel like we are utilizing more high-tech and best industry practices than some of the other counties. We also receive less than half of the funding of Tuolumne County, and yet our web visits are much higher than theirs. I think the Facebook followers right now are at 30,000 and ours are over 50,000. So on the limited budget that we have, I feel like we are really hitting it out of the park.
Thank you.
You brought up earlier you're working on a study of conversion of Facebook statistics to actual visits to the county. This is crucial to actually show your success, because my experience with marketing and Facebook, I went to a few classes through my campaign, and just because I had 5 times as many likes as on my page as my opponent didn't mean I had 85% of the vote. So you could have 50,000 likes just because people like clicking like. So that conversion and that statistic is crucial in showing your success through the Facebook page.
So actually, our conversion study is on the website. It's not on Facebook. So one of the ways that you can see with Facebook is the engagement rate. We have very high engagement rates too. It's not just how many people click. We've had marketing experts come in and want to do Facebook for us, but when they see our conversion rates, they realize they can't beat those. So our engagement rates are actually the indicator that we are doing really well on Facebook.
Okay, good. Another thing, going through here, there's some brief sections, but this is primarily geared towards the Highway 4 corridor. And the Highway 4 corridor, I understand, is more geared to tourism as a whole. I mean, all the way from Copperopolis up to Bear Valley. But I know this has been brought up before. I would like to see more of our lakes. We have Hogan, Pardee, Comanche. Now, we don't necessarily see a TOT revenue from the campgrounds, but we have many other restaurants and everything else that convert into revenue for the county and everything else. I would love to see more gearing towards that, and also the rest of the west side of the county also, because the McCollum River, and I visit McCollum Hill all the time. I'm sure Jack's district would love to see that. I mean, McCollum Hill is a beautiful small town, and they do have a hotel there.
So just to respond to that, so this particular publication that you have there is partner invested. So it's actually paid for by everybody that's listed in there. So there is going to be a little bit of limit on which areas it covers, simply because of that. It's not that particular piece is not TOT funded. However, what we did do when we created our website is that we created these really rich content sections on what we're calling the Tri-Lakes area. And we have a section on the McCollum Coast to Crest Trail. So in our social media marketing and online, we are very conscious of the fact that we want to assist with more recreational opportunities and letting people know about what's out there. We do a really good job of covering across the board. But just on this piece, because it is business partners who invest in it, and that's how that piece is funded.
I did see the website this week, and I got in there to double check, because I know we had this, or not me necessarily, because I wasn't here last year, but this conversation came up on the Tri-Lakes area last year, and I noticed that you've taken many steps on your website to insert the lakes and everything on our west side of the county. I just would like to gear up tourism, because the Highway 4 corridor is not the only way into the county, and we have a lot of other good aspects in the west side of the county, and I don't want those to be left off or forgotten.
I completely agree. I actually was just having a meeting with a potential outfitter for doing guided tours yesterday, and I was highly recommending the Tri-Lakes area. He's going to be looking into that. So another thing that we did in the guide, since we don't have those listings, is we made sure to include lots of photography from the west side of the county. And actually, our new guide is at the printer right now, so you'll see an increase in that for the west side of the county. We made a concerted effort to do that this year, so I hope you'll be happy with it. And I'd love to hear from you to know if we've helped on that regard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Your budget last year, $429,000. With the recent passage of the increase in the TOT, have you determined yet what that impact's going to be to your budget for this fiscal year?
So if we continue to receive the 25%, then it's going to double the portion from TOT from the county. But the $429 was not the actual. That wasn't the. That was our budget. So we had some projects that we didn't complete in the previous fiscal year that we pulled into this fiscal year. So we had additional dollars in there. So I don't know what the actual numbers will look like for the upcoming fiscal year. But because we had held on to some project money and pulled it into this last fiscal year, there might not be a huge difference as far as what our budget is. But what our income is will definitely be increasing from the county if we continue to receive the 25% that we received last year.
So you're planning a mid-year budget adjustment then to accommodate that increase in funds?
Well, it hasn't really, it's only just started to kick in. So we're already past the mid-year budget point. So I think what we'll do is we'll take whatever additional revenues come in and we'll apportion them to the next fiscal year. Fortunately, we were eventually able to discover how to do this from our accounting service. So we can do an unrestricted fund line item so we can pull those dollars into the next fiscal year. And just so you know, we are fully audited on uneven. Wait a second. We just did a financial review for 2018, and this year for 2019 we'll be doing a full audit with Wheeler and Egger, and so we have good financial oversight. We also have a separate accounting service with Tribble and Ayala, who create all of our financial reports for us. So we have, I just wanted to let you know that we have that going on too.
The next point is that the Bureau of Reclamation and New Maloney's is like the big gorilla in the room, so to speak, when it comes to recreation and tourism and draw. And we're working very closely with them through the Visitors Bureau to ensure that their exposure is as we need it to be. Have they experienced have you gotten any feedback from them on the visitor use days and how that your advertising is impacting or benefiting them?
We haven't heard directly from them. We do have concerns that Natural Bridges, for instance, is being over-trafficked. That's why that's as part of the reason that we started this sustainable tourism program. Anytime we talk about these beautiful outdoor areas that potentially could have negative impact, we make sure to include that information and a link through to our Hoplitely page so people can become better educated on how to behave. But I'm also hopeful that if we have some outfitters who are doing guided hikes, the mere fact that you've got experts on the trails will help to maybe flush out some of the less desirable people that have sometimes been frequenting some of these recreational areas and creating damage. So if those start to come through more frequently, and you have guides that are really caring about the environment and talking about conservation and culture and the natural environment and geology, that will start to have a positive impact as well.
Just so the public's aware, we are working on that issue about natural bridges, and I did get a confirmation yesterday that the Congressman's office is continuing a discussion with the regional director of the Bureau of Reclamation to bring to a quick resolution their issues with the natural bridges and how it's being supported. We certainly don't want that resource to be damaged,
No.
and they're going to do everything they can from a federal side to ensure that it is protected.
Excellent.
So I would hope that we would just keep that on the list, keep promoting it.
Right.
Don't change our strategy at all, and let's just work it out amongst the various partners as how we're going to make it better accessible for everybody.
Good.
Supervisor Toffenelli.
Supervisor Mills, you're done?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
This will be the last annual presentation you'll be making to this board?
Yes, it will be.
Yes. I want to thank you so much for the work you've done over the years as
you.
assistant, and then when you took over the CEO position. You've done outstanding work over the course of the years, so thank you, and I wish you well. Is there an official date that you're leaving?
I am leaving at the beginning of July. I don't have an actual date.
You don't have an actual
but
date?
No.
Well, it'll be very difficult, whoever takes over, to fill your shoes. You've done an outstanding job.
Thank you so much. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
It's been a pleasure. I mean, if any place that you could hope to be promoting as a destination, Calaveras is amazing. I've had the most wonderful time working here.
And you're headed home.
I'm headed home.
You're headed home. Well, good for you.
Thank you.
Yes. And again, thank you for the work you've done here in
Thank you.
Calaveras.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you very much, Lisa. This is an informational item, but is there any public comment?
Good morning, Stacy Johnston, Calaveras County Chamber of Commerce. I want to echo Gary's comment, Supervisor Toffenelli's comments. 4.5 years ago, when I came into my position as the CEO of the Chamber, I didn't know the relationship between the Visitors Bureau and the Chamber. Didn't know we had one. There was non-existent. And so very quickly met with Lisa within 2 weeks and began to cultivate this relationship between two organizations that need very strongly to be involved with each other, both representing the greater health of this county. And so it has been a pleasure working with you, Lisa, and I know I've had tears when she announced her intent to go home. While I completely understand it and support it 100%, there will be big shoes to fill here. And I appreciate your passion for Calaveras County. And as we've talked about before, people may not always see eye to eye. We're not supposed to, but we're able to do so respectfully, and great things come out of those relationships. So I thank you for the work that you've done. It's amazing, and I wish you all the best luck.
Thank you,
Stacy.
Stacy.
Al, you were going to say something?
Al Sagala, Taxpayer Association, and Director in CABA, which is the Copperopolis Area Business Association. Lisa, we are sorry to see you go. You're starting to lose your English accent, so you have to renew it. And you've done wonders for our county. There's a few things that are going on. It's kind of exciting. In the Copperopolis area, the new Copperopolis Town Square, its business plan was to have more residential and to have that balance between commercial and residential. But there's been kind of a damper put on that in that area in favor of agriculture. So there's been a change in ownership, and the new ownership is more interested in tapping into visitors and tourism to maybe create alliances with businesses, particularly tourist businesses like the caves and gold mines, that could have a presence in the town square. But when you start thinking about that, gee, this is a wonderful opportunity for another branch of the Visitors Bureau, because it would be total harmony. And the CABA and also Taxpayer Association would like to see more prosperity in the Copperopolis area. And so just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Neil?
I'd like to say thank you for the presentation and all the good work that you've done. I know the Visitors Bureau is very important to this community, and to support what Supervisor Stopper said, there are a large group of organic farmers in the western part of the county that also could benefit greatly from support that you give to the local industry, and agritourism could be a great addition to the overall economy, and would, not to beat a dying industry, but it would be really helpful if we could all find a way to get together and make that happen. Thank you.
We are actually working on an agritourism intensive right now in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Department for Calaveras. There is a new session coming up on March. Oh, you're right, it's tomorrow. And that will be taking place at the Calaveras County Fairgrounds in Angels Camp. I think it's only $20 to attend, so you're welcome to attend if you'd like to.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Appreciate it. Okay, if there's no further questions from the board, I'd like to thank the Visitors Bureau very much for their work and for attending today and bringing us up to date. And we will take a 15-minute break to set up for the next phase of the meeting. Thank you. Thank you, and welcome back. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item 18 is from the Administrative Office to ratify award of bid number 18-1000-04-968 for tree mortality mitigation services to Danvers Construction Services Incorporated of Clovis, California, and ratify the County Administrative Officer's execution of an agreement for services in the amount not to exceed $270,000 for project areas 4A and 7A, and authorize the County Administrative Officer purchasing agent to execute any amendments necessary to extend the term of the agreement through June 30th, 2019, in order to complete the required work.
Bonnie?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bonnie Rich, Administration. The board will recall on April 10th of 2018, the Administrative Office came to the board and introduced the first update from our contracted project manager, TSS, who is responsible for managing the tree mortality removal program. Within that particular agenda item, which set the framework for the monthly updates that the board received, there was a specific action delegated to the CAO to award any bids and execute any subsequent contracts for tree mortality, tree removal services, not to exceed $250,000. We have issued, I think we're up to about 14 bids right now. A good portion of those have all been under $250,000. We've even, in some instances, combined project areas within bids in order to expedite the process. This item comes before you literally as an oops. In August of 18, we issued a bid for tree removal services for 2 defined project areas. When we issue those bids and receive the bids and evaluate them, we make an award based on the total bid amount of a defined project area. Within each project, there are also additional trees that are not identified at the time of bid issuance. In reviewing another bid that recently came across our desk, it raised a red flag. We have another contract that will be coming to the board for award, whereby the contract is more than $250,000. In this particular case, that is exactly what happened. We received bids, we evaluated it. The amounts based on our evaluated totals was less than $250,000. It didn't raise any red flags. When we asked the consultant to give us the not to exceed amount of what the contract should be based on their estimate of the additional trees to be felled, it went over $250,000. It was simply just an administrative oversight. The contract made its way through our entire internal review and approval. And in terms of this particular project, 4A is not complete. The majority of that project is now under snow. We will need to issue an amendment to extend the term to the end of the fiscal year. Once the snow melts, we will have the contractor finish the work on that project. 7A has been completed, and partial payment has been made under the contract. One of the things that we're doing now to prevent this from happening in the future is at the time we open the bids and evaluate, we are then reaching out to the consultant at that time, our consulting project manager at that time, to give us an estimated total for the additional trees that need to be felled, so that we know at that time what the total not to exceed of the amount of the contract is, and in which case we would then bring back the bid award to the board for approval and award. But we will have one more coming to the board. I would like to get it on for the 19th, but that's a study session date, so likely not going to be until the last meeting in March. So this asks your board to ratify the CAO signature on the bid award and the resulting contract.
Mr. Mills?
Thank you. So your one more you're talking about is a possible one more amendment?
I'm sorry, say that
Are
again?
you thinking this, there might be an amendment to this contract or this agreement at all?
This particular one, yes. Typically, when we issue the contracts, we issue the contracts with a performance period of 45 or 60 days from the date of the notice to proceed that is issued. That is a process that works well. However, we had a healthy winter, and a portion of Project 4A ended up being covered in snow up at the higher elevations, and so they were not able to complete the work. So I need to issue an amendment to just extend the term only, nothing else, so that they can complete the project once the snow melts.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to be sure we're not talking about subsequent amendments and adjustments and that kind of things. And your confidence is pretty high that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion or a motion?
I'll move this item, Mr. Chair.
Item is moved by Supervisor Toffenelli. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Stopper. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Item 19 is from the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors to assign members of the Board of Supervisors as representative and the alternate for the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and the Mountain Counties Air Basin Boards for 2019. So at the beginning of the year, when we made our initial assignments for the board, these were two groups that we were under the impression that we didn't need to assign a representative or an alternate either for whatever reason. We weren't a voting member at that point this year, or the board was not, we didn't know that the board was actually meeting. So subsequently we have found out we do need to have representatives. So for each of these, I will need one board member representative and one alternate.
Madam Clerk, if I can ask a quick question. Why do we need the Sierra Nevada Conservancy? I'm pretty sure you've explained this to me before, but Sierra Nevada Conservancy is with a different county. Different county has an alternate set up for that already. So this is an alternate to the alternate?
My understanding is that the member counties are required to have a representative, and that it's not necessarily an alternate to an alternate, but it's that someone is there In the event, one of the reasons being that if someone is there in the event that someone can't continue their term and another county needs to be named to pick up.
Is that in your bylaws? Because we never.
They
I
said it's
served
in
on that
government code,
They said it's in
in
government.
public resources code.
Because if, for example, right now it's in Tuolumne County, and then it would go back to Amador County, so they're, I believe, next in line, or somebody else, not Calaveras is not next in line. So if it
You
fell-
don't have to make an appointment. They have requested that you do. So if you don't wish to make one, that's totally your choice.
Well, I just think, someone's going to get to file an extra 700 form, and
Chair,
yes, sir.
I'd like to weigh in on this. I was up in Auburn with Sierra Nevada Conservancy here last week. Had a chance to meet their new executive officer. Her regional staffer had reached out to me for a meeting in March to continue a discussion I had started up there regarding their role with watersheds and what they do, which is they do very well. So I would like to, if they were going to appoint a member, I would certainly like to be that member and continue that conversation with them. I'm working with Amador County Water and some of the members in the Tuolumne Water regarding watershed issues. So it fits very well to have somebody there. Also, since we do rotate, that doesn't mean that we don't have conversations with our selected representative to the SNC, and we need to be able to have that input to be able to get our message into that conversation as well, so it's not just a county being represented individually. So working on a regional basis, we would still talk to Sherry Brennan, who is the appointed at this point, and I do have a good working relationship with Supervisor Brennan.
Supervisor Callaway, you had your light on, no comment? Is there anybody else who's interested? Supervisor
No,
Toffenali?
I'll move that Supervisor Mills for the Sierra Nevada Conservancy be our representative.
We have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
We need an alternate.
Why
We're
don't
not
we-
required.
Then let's don't.
So who made the motion?
Supervisor
I
Toffenali
did.
made a motion to appoint Supervisor Mills.
We generally like to have an alternate in the event that the person who's the representative can't make the meeting and would like someone else to sit in their place.
So we want to
I'll
alternate
revise
the
my,
alternate's
I'll
alternate.
revise my motion that we appoint Supervisor Mills as the representative and Supervisor Callaway as the alternates.
I used to be on their board.
Yeah.
I know you did.
So really, we're an alternate of an alternate. I mean, there's
No, no.
nothing stopping.
Maria, you're the
from-
alternate to the alternate.
I know, Jesus. I mean, there's nothing stopping Dennis from doing what he's doing.
No,
I
there
mean,
isn't.
Ben's going to join 4 policy committees at CSAC.
So, okay, is there,
I'll second Gary's move. And I have not committed to 4 policy meetings, Marita.
Madam Clerk, we have a motion from Supervisor Toffenali to have Supervisor Mills serve as the alternate and Supervisor Callaway serve as the alternate's alternate. Is there public comment on this item? Seeing none?
So I would just like to clarify that you are appointing a representative and an alternate to our county's representative. That is correct? That's what the motion is?
We are appointing an alternate as outlined here in this agenda item. So we have a second, we have a motion and by Supervisor Toffenali, a second by Supervisor Stopper. Public comment, seeing no public comment, I'll bring that item back. And we're breaking this into 2 pieces.
Yes.
Bring that item back to the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. The second item is the Mountain County's Air Basin. Congratulations, you Mountain. And the Mountain County's Air Basin Board? Is there any background on that?
It's not active at this time, is it?
My understanding is that they have requested that you appoint a representative and an alternate, as we have done for many, many, many years, whether they were active or not.
All right, is anybody interested in serving on this board?
You want me to appoint
I'm okay
somebody?
with
No,
uncomfortable
no,
silence.
I'm at, since most of the burning occurs in the Ebbets Pass corridor, I'll go on Mountain County's Air Resources Board, if and when they meet.
You want me to be your alternate?
And Mr. Mills will be the alternate.
Okay, we have is there a motion for that?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Tofinelli moves that Supervisor Callaway will be the delegate and Supervisor Mills will be the alternate.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Stopper. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. We already have a motion, we have public comment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Item 20 is from the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors to appoint applicants to serve on various committees, commissions, advisory boards, and county service areas. The applications that you have before you today are one vacancy on the County Service Area 12 Golden Hills Road Advisory Committee. It's for a term expiring 12/31/22. We have an application from Daniel Young, who is the incumbent. The next we have is a vacancy on the Children and Families Commission, first 5, for a vacancy expiring 12/31/21 for the Public Health Officer. You have an application from Colleen Rodriguez, who is the incumbent. And last, you have a vacancy on the Law Library Board of Trustees for a vacancy for a term expiring 12/31/19 for an attorney. And you have an application from Sarah Decay, who is the incumbent.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to doing these all with one motion? No. Very well. Any questions or discussions from the board? No. Is there public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion or motion.
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Stopper.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Mills. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, so the next item, item 21, is from the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors to receive a report of the clerk's review of the Airport Land Use Committee and the Agriculture Advisory Committee. So as part of the annual review that was requested last year, these are a few of the last ones. The Airport Land Use Committee was established by Public Utilities Code for most county airports. Its purpose is to promote the overall goals and objective of the California Airport Noise Standards adopted pursuant to a section of the Public Utilities Code. We have 7 members, 2 representing cities in the county, 2 representing the county, the Board of Supervisors, 2 with expertise in aviation, and 1 representing the general public. In the last 8 years, since I have been here, this group has never met, and there have never been appointments made. However, my understanding is that we are required to have it by code, and the airport manager appears to be the contact or the coordinator for this group. So I don't recommend any changes. I would guess at some point we would actually appoint people to it, but I don't know. The Ag Advisory Committee is also established by government code, and its duties include reviewing the proposed creation and modification or dissolution of agricultural preserves and the yearly production of ag preserves, making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on these matters. Its membership is comprised of 1 member from each district with a knowledge of the ag industry within the county. The terms are 4 years in length, and members may be appointed for an unlimited amount of terms. The Ag Commissioner is the staff contact for this group. The group meets as needed, and in the past 2 years has met annually. Their members are eligible to receive compensation for travel to and from committee meetings. However, currently only 1 member chooses to receive compensation. The clerk's recommendation is that to leave the committee as it is, but They do not have any adopted bylaws, and we have been trying to get all groups to adopt bylaws to assist their members in the conducting of their business. So that would be my only recommendation, is that the group adopt bylaws.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Any discussion from the board? Supervisor Mills.
Yes, have we reached out to Kathy as to whether or not the airport, she feels that there's a need for this commission?
Every year. Every year I've reached out, and I've been told that they're not meeting right now, so we don't need to do anything. I don't need to worry about it.
Well, should they need to do something, I would be more than happy to serve on it as a pilot. It's a piece of the world, so to speak. But if there is no reason to, I see no need. You know, if we get into some land use issues regarding the airport, then it may have some value, but right now I don't see the value.
Right, and so should that need arise, what we would need to do is advertise for vacancies in the newspaper, have an application period, and then applications would come to the board for consideration.
Other questions from the board? This is an information item only, so is there public comment? Al?
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. We might consider requesting that the state modify these requirements to allow the counties to voluntarily form these committees if they wish to, and if they don't, not be required to. And perhaps we can reach out to RC, and CSAC to lobby with other counties that may have similar problems, and thus approach the legislature to make these changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board, but there's no action here, so thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
The administrative office has asked that we take a 5-minute break so they can set up for their presentation of the next item.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Now is the day and time that we scheduled for the mid-year budget report. Before I get into the actual report, I just wanted to make an anecdotal comment that I noticed that last...
You have to have it facing you, man.
Really?
Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to make a comment that I noticed that the last 3 or 4 years, you've received a different format in the presentation of the mid-year report. I made a report 2 years ago, and then Mr. Lutz made a report last year. I liked his a lot better than mine, so I'm using his format, and hopefully in future years, so that the board doesn't have to adjust and adapt to the way the CAO decides to make the report. Hopefully this will be a format that they can use in the future. Going on to the next slide. Our intent this morning is to present to you a summary of the expenditures as of December 31st last year, present to you a summary of the revenues as of December 31st, provide you with a mid-year summary toward the end, and then provide for discussion and consideration of the various recommendations. I am happy to respond to any questions at whatever point you would like to ask those, but I'm hoping that I will have answered most of your questions before I get to the end. But again, if you want to interrupt, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I mean, provide your comments at any point. I'm happy to try to respond to that. Going on to the summary of the expenditures. As indicated in the chart that's in your package, the driving force of this, and virtually all budgets, county budgets, are comprised of two primary components. First, the salaries and benefits, which in our case are coming in at about 42% of the budgeted amount and represents about $14 million as of last December 31st. Secondly, we provide you with we include in the budget the services and supplies. In this case, we have those coming in, the expenditures have come in at about 28.2%. This amount is low. However, compared to those years, those budgets that have been presented to you prior to the disaster and the cannabis revenues and expenditures, is closer to it being in line with those earlier budgets. This is a different year because we do not have the cannabis and the disasters are winding down, so there's fewer revenues and fewer expenditures related to those type of activities. However, I also wanted to bring out that if we were to not consider the appropriation for contingencies, which was $3.7 million, that amount, instead of being 28%, would be closer to about 36%. Excuse me. So again, the point I'm trying to make is that this budget looks a lot more like earlier budgets and less like the budgets of the last 3 years. The next chart is just a pictorial perspective of the same numbers. I'm somewhat graphically oriented, so I like to see what things look like in comparison to each other, and I think a pie chart does a really good job of showing that. The numbers and the percentages in this pie chart are the same numbers that you saw in chart 1, but it does, bring out the comparison relatively to the entire budget. And you can see that the blue and the reddish, burnt orange, whatever color that is, are clearly the vast majority of the expenditures this year. Going back to the salaries and benefits, which is the largest expenditure, we have spent, again, $14.1 million, 42% of our budget has been on that, which is significantly less than what's budgeted, but I want to point out there are a lot of reasons for that. One is when new budgets include new personnel, it takes several months to bring people in, so those expenditures wouldn't occur. And then we always have the normal turnover of 3 to 5% per year. So when we have vacant positions, obviously we won't be expending money on those positions, even though the positions are available. Again, the service and supplies coming in at 28% is really less than what we would expect. There have been a big part of that lower expenditure is because the amounts being spent on consultants and other professional services has been less. Again, much of the previous budgets, and I believe the reason that we had higher amounts included in the budget is because there was an expectation that there would be some continuation of those services. We've been fortunate that we have not had to have all of those expenditures, and we are not by any means suggesting that we go out and start spending the balance, the remaining amount. But it will, as the year goes by, that 28% will probably be much higher on a percentage basis as well as a dollar basis. But we just have not spent it because there has not been a need. Continuing with the expenditure focus, the next item deals with salary savings. Because of those vacant positions, we are at this point, if the exact numbers were to be duplicated in the second half of the year, we would have a salary savings of $1.8 million toward the end of the year. However, that will not happen. There have been a number of changes, particularly in the sheriff's office, that will affect that. So we expect that the end of the year savings will be closer to $1.4 million. And again, part of that is also because of the timing of the vacant positions. One of the concerns remains with the overtime cost. Over the last several years, we have been increasing the overtime cost in our budget, but even with those increases, we continue to have overages in the actual amount spent. In this particular case, as you can see on the chart, we are at nearly 70% of budget midway through the year. A big part of that overtime, the vast majority actually of that overtime is in the sheriff's budget. The sheriff has been understaffed most of the year. My discussions with him several weeks ago is that they have made a number of adjustments, and they do not expect that overtime to continue at the same trajectory as it has the first 6 months. So we believe that at the end of the year that overtime costs will be significantly less than a doubling of the $867,000 that we have spent this year. The overtime cost, again, is primarily in the sheriff's office. The next budget that is affected, that has a significant effect on overtime, has been in IT. Their overtime costs have been $8,000 as compared to the sheriff's office of $839,000. The IT is $8,000. All of the other departments put together are about $20,000. So again, the focus has to be on ways to better manage our overtime in the sheriff's office. I've had many discussions with him on this, and I'm convinced that the changes that they'll be making, I'll be talking about some of those changes later on, will bring down those overtime costs significantly before the end of the year. Going on then to the budgeted versus the actual revenues. As we look into the revenues received by the county, as of December 31st, we have received just over $22 million. We have budgeted $62 million. So we are at about 36% of revenues received as compared to revenues expected. On a percentage basis, however, the revenues are coming in just slightly above the expenditures. Expenditures, as I mentioned earlier, is at 34.6. Revenues is at about 36. However, in actual dollar amounts, because they're the different numbers in actual dollar amounts, the expenditures are less than the anticipated revenues. And again, we don't expect those expenditures to continue at the same level. So, and I'll make the summary of that later on in the presentation. The obvious disparities in the revenues come from state and federal funds. As we have less and less activity dealing with the disasters that we've had over the last 3+ years, we are clearly receiving less revenues as reimbursements from state and federal sources, and expect that to continue to dwindle the rest of this year and into next year as well. Another major component of the reduction in revenues deals with cannabis. At midpoint last year, we were at about $4.6 million in revenues as a direct result of the ban. That amount that has been collected this year is $205,000. In addition, when Mr. Lutz made his presentation last year, he noted that revenues were still coming in from Measure C, and at the time of delivery of the mid-year budget, last, I think it was the 27th last year, 27th of February, there were over $7 million in cannabis revenue that was received, and this year again, we are at $205,000. That $205,000, which was expected to be 660, was primarily coming from dispensaries, and the implication is that the dispensaries are not operating at the same level as they were in previous years. And that's why we're expecting less, but we have received even less than the expectations that we had. Another item on that list is for fines and forfeitures. It's relatively small compared to the overall budget. But I wanted to point out that it's our expectation that we will be close to budget at the end of the year. Those revenues are just coming in slowly, but they are coming in, and we're probably very close to the actual amount, in spite of the fact that we are, I believe, at 2.5% this year. Going on to the general fund.
Excuse me, was that due to the shutdown? Some of it?
Supervisor Tofanelli, I don't know that. Your question suggests to me that it probably was, and I think that was. I did not delve into that to get that specific information, but the revenues have been coming in, but in previous years, they come in slowly and then come in
Comes in towards the end,
significantly more toward the end of the fiscal year. Going on to the next chart, just wanted to make some points with you. First is that the general fund is at about 36.1% of budgeted revenues. The overall funds we are, I probably should have mentioned at the beginning, but we are focusing on the general fund, those funds, those monies that you have more discretion over. But when you include all the non-general fund budgets, we are at about 40.6% of the budgeted revenue, relatively close to mid-year projections. Our revenue collection is going to continue to be relatively strong. And as I mentioned earlier, historically, if you don't include the last 2-3 years as a result of disasters and cannabis, the funding amounts and percentages are much closer to the historical collection cycles that we've had in the past. Again, many of our collections will occur in the last half of the fiscal year. The next thing I wanted to focus on is under the revenue focus, deals with the property taxes, the taxes in total. We have received $6.5 million in property taxes, which is actually higher percentage-wise and dollar-wise than we had for last year. So that's a very strong indicator that that the assessments and the payments are catching up significantly and will have a major impact on your future budgets. Again, historically, revenue from property tax and sales tax comprises the vast majority of your actual revenues. Tacking onto that is a sales and use tax that is at $1.7 million this year. That's a 17% of that total pie chart that I was referring to that we had up there on the chart earlier. So sales and use tax are compared to the overall budget is a significant part. The actual dollar amount of $1.7 million is slightly above what we have experienced in the past when you omit the cannabis revenues that we've had recently. Wanted to talk a little bit about TOT. We are currently at about 52%, 53% of the budget amount. The actual dollar amount is $395,000, which is significantly more than it was a year ago. It was, even though it's significantly more, it was estimated conservatively. We had no idea. We did not know whether Measure G would pass. Obviously it did, and the revenues was, the percentage was increased from 6 to 12% effective on December 14th. So there's very little of the increase reflected in that amount of $395,000. That's pretty much based on the 6%. We expect to have about 147% at the end of the year because we have doubled, but we only have roughly one half of the year, so we should get about 147% of the TOT tax. As the board is well aware, that money has been designated for use by four agencies: the Public Works Department, the Visitors Bureau, the fire departments, and I forgot what the fourth one was. Sheriff, yes. How could I forget the sheriff? So that money is designated for him. However, as the new budget is presented to you, your board can make those decisions whether or not you want to keep that. The excise tax, Measure C, the cannabis tax, again, we assumed that because of the ban, the only revenue that would be coming in would be the approximately $660,000 that we had from the previous year. That's the amount that we budgeted, but again, only $205,000 has come in. And I make the point that a year ago, when Mr. Lutz made the presentation, it was $7.7 million, so a significant difference between the $205,000 that we have and the $7.7 that we had last year. Going on to the mid-year summary, like to point out that, again, the salary savings that we expect at the conclusion of this fiscal year will be about $1.4 million. And that's a substantial savings compared to recent years. That's a very significant savings in salaries. We have requested, the board has requested, and staff has assured that the draw against the general fund contingencies has been fairly minimal this year. In past years, there were several recommendations that came to the board the first half of the year. There have been just a handful of them that have come to you this fiscal year. The total amount of draw from the contingencies was about $118,000 compared to, actually I don't have that number in front of me, but it was significantly more when we were having multiple increases in mid-year, particularly the first half of the mid-year. We again expect that because of the increase in TOT, that we will be seeing some significantly increased money available for the board's utilization in the 1920 budget. And in all, when we summarize all of the minuses and pluses that we've had compared to recent years, the very good news is that we still anticipate that on June 30th of this year, you will have approximately $9 million in your cash carry that can be used for balancing the budget next year or whatever discretionary expenses that the board chooses to have. Also wanted to mention that we have not forgotten that the Calaveras County settled with PG&E recently regarding the impacts of the Butte fire. We have collected $20.5 million. That money is in the county's pool. However, it is not in your budget, this year's budget. The board has requested that we bring that issue back to you as a study session. It's tentatively scheduled to be discussed on April the 19th of this year so that the board can direct staff how it wants to see that money utilized. That's effectively the report, but there are a number of actions that we are going to be asking of your board. First would be that you accept the report that's just been presented to you. And then in addition, we have a number of budget adjustments that have been requested by the departments, and I'd like to go over some of those. When you do consider those, just recognize that the board is required to approve those, if you choose to approve them, by a 4/5 vote. The first list of adjustments are what we refer to as technical adjustments, basically adjustments to conform to revenues that we've received and expenditures that we've made. There's not a lot of discretion, if you will. I term them cleanup items, but again, you can make whatever adjustments that you choose to do. Those are identified in attachments A and B. Attachment C of your package is, let me find my notes and I'll tell you what it is. Those are a number of requests by the departments that that have been identified as not having any impact on the general fund. I'm talking about the technical adjustments. The remaining items, which are identified as C and D, do in some cases require an additional contribution from the general fund, and I'll go through several of those, the major ones, and then I'll get on to item D. The first one I wanted to speak about is request number 4, which is the contributions on page 8 of your staff report. Item 4 is a, there has been some work done by the Public Works Department that is not road fund related. The road fund is not allowed to spend its road funds on non-road fund issues, and they've indicated they have spent about $17,190 on those type of issues. And then there's also expenditures and revenues that we have not that we are not going to be realizing. So in effect, there'll be a need for a $112,000 adjustment to the general fund to cover those items. Again, there's a number of adjustments that are being requested that have no general fund contribution. I won't mention those unless you choose to have some discussion about those. The next item that has an adjustment to the general fund is request number 11. This is for animal services budget. They have had less revenue come in, and their expenditures have gone up slightly. In total, the reduction in revenue and the increased expenditure, they're requesting an additional $9,839. Environmental health budget also is looking for an additional $22,000 to deal with expenditures that are coming in at higher amounts by about $44,000, and revenues that are coming in at about $67,000. They can absorb the majority of that, but they will need an additional $22,939. Economic development, you might recall that several weeks ago, the Economic Development Coordinator brought to your board a grant from the state for the census. Those funds are split over 2 years. So we are asking you to increase the contribution by $17,250 for this year. That money has already been put into the county's fund, but this is an expenditure so that they can utilize that money. Item 15 is from the grand jury. They have had a number of increases for various things. In total, they're asking for an additional $13,561. Item 16 is from the County Administrator's Office. The existing budget did not take into account that we would be paying the cash outs for vacations for 2 individuals that left in the mid-year, and so there's about $21,000 to pay that. That was not considered when the budget was prepared because we were not aware that those individuals would be leaving. And then there is $32,000 that's being requested to make up our share of the pension obligation that all departments have. In our case, there's a $32,000 hit to us. And finally, there was a typographical error in the budget of about $6,000, and we are asking that the board provide that funding. In total, the county administrator is asking for an additional $54,000. Item 17 is from the coroner. He's requesting an additional contribution of $35,000 due to expenditures exceeding their expectations and revenues not coming in at the level that they expected. So they are asking for $35,000. Information technology is asking for an additional $71,000. They have not had the revenue coming in from chargebacks to the departments, and their expenses for the pension liability is an additional $28,000 net of $71,000. Likewise, the GIS budget is requesting an increase of $11,000 from the TEETR fund and an additional contribution, general fund contribution of $44,000 to again deal with an increase in the workload and not commensurate revenues to deal with that. The Human Resources Department is requesting $54,000. Again, much of that is, much of their additional expenses come and are being from the chargebacks and not having sufficient revenue that was budgeted. They can absorb a great deal of it, but they cannot absorb $54,000, and they are asking that you increase their budget by that amount. Next item is correction, or not, going back to traditional budgets where the county supervisors have a travel budget. That budget was significantly reduced this year. It's our recommendation that budget be increased. We have, the board has approved a contract with a legislative consultant It is necessary, maybe not imperative, but certainly necessary for one or two board members to join her as a group attempts to lobby for additional funds. And we know very well that that firm is bringing in, we expect will be bringing in significant additional monies that the county did not have. But in order for board members to be able to travel to Washington, D.C. to lobby for those funds, it is necessary to bring about $7,633. That will in effect bring each board member to a $2,000 limit for the balance of the fiscal year. We are a member of the Upper McCalmy River Watershed Authority. Last year, they increased their dues, significantly increased their dues to all the participating agencies, including us. We had budgeted $11,000 as our contribution to that. It has gone up to $22,000, so we are asking that you allocate an additional $11,000 for that activity. Attachment D in your budget package addresses all those items that are non-general fund requests, with one exception, and that is for the PATV. I forget what PATV is, what it stands for. I know it's television, but I know it's Susan and the filming of these things that we do. They have a studio, and their equipment has started to have a lot of difficulty, so they are asking for an additional $14,000 to buy the same cameras that have been mounted in this office. The value of that, obviously, is that they'll be able to perform their normal duties with better equipment, but in the event that we have difficulties with the equipment in this office, we can move that equipment over here fairly readily and continue and not have any interruptions in the filming of these meetings. I alluded to this a few minutes ago, but in the third quarter of this year, the Sheriff's Department is expected to effectuate staffing changes that they've been working on for some time. As a result of this, they believe that they will be able to bring down the overtime that has been plaguing that, wrong term, but has been a problem for the department because they exceed their budget every year. So with the staffing changes that they are going to be implemented, we believe that increase in that overtime increases will start going in the other direction for the future years. As noted earlier, we expect to have a $9 million cash carryover at the end of June of this year, and so when we prepare the budget for next year, we will be making recommendations that were mentioned by both Rebecca and Supervisor Mills about having funds available in future years to deal with the possibility that we may not be fully reimbursed by state and local agencies for the disasters. And then in addition to that, we want to start funding the pension obligations that we have and will continue to increase. We have established what's termed as a Section 115 pension fund. We have not contributed to that yet, but it is our expectation to start doing that with the fiscal 1920 year, to have that money available so that we won't be surprised every year. You heard me mention probably 4 or 5 departments that need additional money just to pay that pension obligation. The other thing I wanted to bring out is that there has been a lot of discussion in the past regarding space planning, space needs. When the board had this discussion regarding a number of study sessions, one of the items that you emphasized and wanted us to bring back to you is funding recommendations for a number of the items that need to be addressed. I recognize that you did fund a certain projects. They have not gone forward, unfortunately, and admittedly they probably should have gone forward. There were some unforeseen issues that we had to deal with that is delaying it. We're hoping that we'll get some of those going over the next couple of months, but we would like to bring to you a more comprehensive package of the entire campus and how to deal with the needs that are being discussed by many departments. Most departments have space needs or facility needs or capital assets needs that we would like very much to address in a comprehensive, long-term manner. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, is that the state budget does have a provision, the governor's budget has a provision for increasing revenues to Health and Human Services for the in-home supportive services activities that they have there. It was expected that we would be paying somewhere around $177,000 year over year more, and if the governor's proposed budget, his January budget, is approved the way it is, that will come down by substantially from $177,000 to $13,000 a year. And that will make a significant difference because certainly you could reduce the program, but it's been around significantly long time, and I think there's an expectation that it'll continue. And this, if it continued at increases of $177,000 per year, there would almost necessarily have to be general fund contributions to continue to do that. And so that's good news. It's certainly the budget has not been adopted, but it appears that there's a strong possibility that that contribution to the counties will have a significant impact on the in-home supportive services. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, I would ask Bonnie if she would like to speak a little bit about the capital improvement needs that are shown there in your packet. However, they might be a little bit difficult to read, and rather than just ask you to look for the blues and the oranges, we're hoping that this will be a lot more clear.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bonnie Rich, administration, you have this, not capital improvement rather, but capital asset purchases. The document that was attached to the agenda item has since been updated. After the board adopted recommended budget in June, between June and adoption of final budget in September, there were some adjustments that were made, those and approved by your board, and those adjustments were appropriated and properly reflected in the county's financial management system. However, when the fixed asset or capital asset schedule was published in the final budget book, that schedule was not updated. So the first paper-clipped sheet that you have is really what the board actually adopted. Okay? Take away the color coding. This list that you have in front of you today, not what is attached to the agenda item, and I have copies for the public. That is what the board adopted in September of 18. The second stapled item, if you'll look to the far right, there is a status column. Everything that is highlighted in gold is not going to be acquired this fiscal year. Everything that is highlighted in light blue is a new request or an adjustment from mid-year. And just real briefly, agriculture is recommending a reduction of assets to purchase only one vehicle versus two. The district attorney's office is in receipt of new grant funds and has requested that we purchase one new vehicle. Behavioral health, mental health under Health and Human Services, an additional request for a vehicle. The other big call out for the Department of Public Works is 2 dump trucks with plows that will not be purchased, but they're going to take those appropriations and increase snow pluck trowel purchases from 1 to 2. And then finally, as Interim CEO Lutz pointed out, Public Access Television is asking for an additional $14,000 to upgrade their equipment in their studio to match what is here in the board chambers. You will notice that in the status column, the majority of assets have already been purchased this fiscal year. Very excited about that. We will have a cutoff next month. Will be the last month to make any major purchases for this fiscal year. There simply will not be time beyond that to do that. So we feel that we can accommodate those purchases, but you'll notice that there are a number of items that are just simply not going to be acquired this fiscal year.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that does conclude our presentation. At this time, we would like to ask that you receive the mid-year report. We ask that you approve the mid-year budget adjustments as shown on attachments A, B, C, and D. Again, 4/5 vote. We ask that you approve the updated 2018-19 designated special revenue fund appropriations and revenue included in attachment E. Also requires a 4/5 vote. And also that you approve the purchase of capital assets and make those adjustments as Ms. Rich just mentioned. Lastly, item 5 is that you approve the acceptance by Marine Safety of a one-time grant augmentation in the amount of $4,019. Again, it takes a 4/5 vote. The expenditure was included in the list of adjustments that were discussed earlier. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to, Ms. Krista, Bonnie, and I are all available to respond to any questions you might have.
Yes, thank you very much, Emmanuel. Let me ask my fellow board members a quick question. Does anybody think we're going to get this done in the next 4 minutes? I don't think so either. Do you guys want to start and spend these 4 minutes, or you want to just go to lunch and hammer when we come back?
Chair, let's go to lunch, and then we can start fresh, and we'll work the entire process through it.
Everybody else?
Acceptable to the
Gary, what
board.
do you think? Ben?
Sure.
Rita? All right, we're going to go to lunch. We'll reconvene here at 1:30.